My name is Victoria, and I'm a 46-year-old schoolteacher living in Georgia. What I'm about to tell you is a personal near-death experience that revealed something shocking to me about what I believed were the true origins of Black people. What I saw and felt during that moment completely changed how I viewed Black history, Black identity, and how deeply connected Black people are to the divine. Before we begin, I'd love to know where you're watching or listening from. It helps me feel a little closer to you, even though we might be far apart in miles. And please don't forget to like and leave a comment sharing what you think about this testimony and what it brings to your mind. I hope we can have an honest and respectful conversation here, a place where we learn from each other without judgment. So relax and enjoy this story. Everything I'm about to share happened on August 4, 2020. For months before that day, my health had been getting worse. I felt exhausted and weak almost every day, and the pain in my body just wouldn't go away. No matter how many tests I did, the doctors couldn't figure out what was really wrong with me. Then, on that particular evening, everything finally reached a breaking point. I remember sitting on the couch in the living room, talking with my husband about the kids and homework, when all of a sudden, everything went dark. Trying to explain what came next is difficult. One minute I was sitting at home like normal, and the next minute I was somewhere completely different. It was like I had left my body behind. I felt strangely light, almost like I had no weight at all. Then I realized I was standing in a huge, bright place filled with warm light that felt alive somehow, like it was breathing and glowing all around me. And right there, directly in front of me, stood Jesus. His robe was shining white, so bright I could hardly look away, and his eyes looked right into me, not just at me, but into my very soul. In that moment, I felt love, peace, and comfort all flowing toward me at the same time. It was like every fear I had ever carried just melted away instantly. Deep inside, I knew I was with someone who understood everything, someone who knew all answers before I could even ask them. At first Jesus didn't say anything. Then, in a soft and calm voice, he finally spoke, "Welcome, Victoria. You are here for a reason." While I stood there staring at him, 1,000 questions filled my mind all at once. Before I could say a word, Jesus began to speak again, and the things he told me over the next few moments would completely turn my understanding of the world upside down. One of the very first things he talked about was what many people call the curse of Ham. I had heard that story so many times before. Honestly, who hasn't? Growing up in church, I was told again and again that Black people were cursed because of what Ham did to Noah. People often used this idea to justify racism, slavery, and discrimination. But Jesus told me that the whole idea was a misunderstanding. He said, "Victoria, the curse of Ham has been misunderstood for generations. The curse was never placed on Black people." I was shocked and struggled to take in what he was telling me. Jesus explained that the curse wasn't on Ham at all, it was on Canaan, Ham's son. The Bible in Genesis chapter 9, verses 18 through 29, talks about Noah getting drunk and exposing himself. When Ham saw Noah in that condition and didn't cover him, Noah was angry and declared a curse, but that curse was directed at Canaan, not Ham. Then I understood more clearly. The curse on Canaan was like a prophecy about the future descendants of Canaan and the challenges they would face. Hearing this completely changed how I viewed that story, and I felt something open up inside me, like a new clarity I had never felt before. Jesus made it clear, the curse was only for Canaan, not for all of Ham's children. Black people were never cursed. It was Canaan's descendants who carried that burden. But over time, history twisted the message, and people used that misunderstanding to support their own prejudices, pain, and harmful beliefs. Jesus told me that the curse was connected to disobedience and spiritual failure, not to race, appearance, or skin color. It was always about sin, not skin. Jesus showed me how the misunderstanding grew stronger through the centuries, shaping society and causing deep pain and discrimination. Because of misinterpreting the story, generations of people suffered in ways they never should have. As we continued to walk through that beautiful glowing space, Jesus began to reveal the real origins of Black people to me. Like many others, I grew up thinking Black people were somehow less valued or cursed. But Jesus began to show me something entirely different, something filled with honor. He said, "Victoria, many lies have been told about the African people, but today I will show you what is true. Black people, the descendants of Ham, were never cursed. Their story was twisted, but their purpose is blessed." He showed me the importance of Ham's children, Kush, Mizraim, and Put. Jesus explained that Kush was the father of ancient African civilizations, including the powerful Kingdom of Kush, which stood beside Egypt as one of the greatest cultures of the ancient world. And Jesus smiled as he said it. Their history was filled with dignity, strength, and greatness, never shame. What surprised me the most was when Jesus explained that the name Kush actually meant black in the ancient biblical language. And in those times, being called black wasn't an insult. Back then, blackness symbolized beauty, power, and strength. Jesus paused for a moment so I could fully feel the weight of what he was saying. Blackness was never a curse. It was a sacred and honorable identity, even though history later twisted its meaning. Jesus helped me understand that the descendants of Kush had an important role in God's plan for humanity. These people were given gifts of wisdom, leadership, and divine favor long ago. Nations like Ethiopia, Nubia, Kush, and Egypt weren't cursed. They were strong and meaningful parts of ancient civilization, chosen for great things. One of the strongest moments for me was when Jesus talked about ancient Egypt. I had always loved learning about Egypt, the pyramids, the ancient gods, the mysterious tombs, and the incredible achievements that amazed the world. But I never realized how deeply Egypt connected to the bigger spiritual story of creation and humanity. Jesus said, "Victoria, Egypt was never only a place of captivity. It was a birthplace of knowledge, a center of civilization that helped shape the world." He explained that Mizraim, another son of Ham, became the ancestor of the Egyptian people. Egypt, he continued, was part of the same blessed line as Kush. These people were trusted with great knowledge, wisdom that later spread far beyond their borders. Egypt was not only a place of slavery, Jesus said gently. It was once a place of divine wisdom where knowledge was meant to be shared. The rulers of Egypt, their teachers and leaders, carried lessons that shaped world history. Jesus looked at me with understanding, saying, "I know the pain you carry when you think of Egypt and the suffering of the Israelites. But before they fell into idolatry, the Egyptians were chosen to shine light and wisdom to the world." As I listened, I felt something powerful shift inside me. My whole life, I struggled to feel connected to my roots and to understand who I truly was. But Jesus was showing me a new way of seeing myself, one that stretched back through time to ancient people with purpose and dignity. Then Jesus revealed how many scriptures had been misunderstood or misused, twisting truths about race, identity, and heritage. Those misunderstandings caused generations of hurt, division, and discrimination. But Jesus looked at me and said, "The time for healing has arrived. The moment for honesty and clarity had finally arrived. The so-called curse of Ham was never really a curse at all. It was a misunderstanding on a spiritual level, one that was twisted over time and used to suppress, confuse, and hide the true beauty of Black people and their heritage." As Jesus continued guiding me through that glowing and peaceful place, I felt a calmness and understanding that I had never experienced before while alive on earth. The truth felt powerful, almost like a healing explosion, touching old wounds in my heart and giving them comfort. Jesus had already revealed to me how the story of Ham had been wrongly interpreted, and how that misunderstanding fueled centuries of racism, pain, and mistreatment. But there was still more to discover. Jesus, with endless patience, was ready to show me even deeper truths about the divine origins of Black people. "Victoria, there is still more to the story," he said gently. "I want you to see the long legacy of strength, wisdom, and love that has been passed down through generations of my people." In that instant, he showed me a massive tapestry, like a huge woven picture, filled with civilizations. I saw Ethiopia, Nubia, Kush, Egypt, and several others, all connected to the descendants of Kush. Jesus explained that these nations were not just random societies, they were central parts of God's plan for the world. These civilizations helped shape humanity long before confusion and division took over. I was shown the ancient Kingdom of Kush, thriving along the Nile River. The people of Kush were known not only for their military power, but also for their deep spiritual wisdom. They were caretakers of sacred knowledge, Jesus explained. Their understanding of creation and the divine laws of the universe was a gift from God, given to help guide all nations. I saw ancient temples, artifacts, and writings, evidence of a close and meaningful connection with God that many people today don't even know existed. Emotion welled up in my chest as I watched the great Nubian queens. Like Queen Amenorrenas and Queen Makeda, women who led their people with power, bravery, and grace. These queens were not just rulers, Jesus said. They were spiritual leaders as well. They knew their divine purpose was to guide their people with love and wisdom. Then he added softly, they were precious in my sight. Next, Jesus showed me the great kingdom of Egypt as a symbol of God's blessing. Even though the Egyptians later turned toward idolatry, they once stood at the highest point of spiritual and intellectual growth. Egypt was a cradle of wisdom, he said. It was never created to be only a place of slavery, but a place where divine knowledge could grow and spread. I saw how Moses, the prophet chosen to lead, was raised in the palace of Pharaoh. This was no coincidence. Moses was placed in Egypt, Jesus explained, so he could learn from the wisdom of the Egyptians. He was trained to lead my people out. But in the beginning, Egypt was meant to shine as a place of guidance and enlightenment, sharing its wisdom with many nations. Jesus paused before continuing. What people later called idolatry in Egypt was the result of losing their spiritual direction. But when they began, their search was sincere, they were trying to understand the divine. They simply lost their way, yet the roots of their knowledge came from truth. I started to see how the descendants of Africa spread across the world. Jesus showed me that the African diaspora, including the forced removal of millions into slavery, did not happen by accident. It became part of a much larger story in God's plan. I saw how African ancestors carried their strength, wisdom, and spiritual faith wherever they went, even when surrounded by unimaginable suffering. Jesus showed me that slavery, one of humanity's darkest periods, was never God's intention, but the result of human greed and sin. Still, even through that pain, Black people carried a divine spark that could not be taken away, a spark of hope, faith, and spiritual strength. That same strength survived every generation, and it is this strength that made the Black community so powerful and resilient. Victoria, Jesus told me with certainty, African people are not just survivors. They are my warriors, my children, carrying a divine legacy given to them through the ages. When he spoke those words, I didn't just hear them, I felt them deep in my spirit. As I tried to take it all in, I saw visions of Black spiritual leaders, abolitionists, freedom fighters, and voices of justice like Martin Luther King Jr., all inspired by that same divine spark. They weren't only fighting for physical freedom, they were fighting for righteousness, for truth, and for alignment with God's will. I saw how God stayed close to Black people even in their darkest moments, constantly raising leaders, prophets, and activists who spoke truth and guided their people toward healing and hope. Then Jesus revealed the meaning behind African spirituality. I had always wondered about the traditions of my ancestors, the rituals, the honoring of elders, the deep bond with nature and creation. Jesus explained that when these traditions were kept pure and true, they didn't oppose God at all. Instead, they expressed the powerful spiritual connection that African people have always had with the divine. Victoria, he said, your ancestors knew they were connected to the earth, the stars, and all creation. They knew the divine presence is found everywhere, and that everything can be used to honor God. He showed me that the practice of honoring ancestors wasn't about worshiping them, it was about recognizing their sacrifices and holding on to their wisdom. Honoring your ancestors, Jesus explained, means remembering their place in the divine story. It is not about idolizing them but staying connected to the love and knowledge that flows through generations. I saw ancient rituals of African communities, where people danced, sang, and connected with God through the elements of fire, water, air, and earth. These practices were based on the belief that God's presence wasn't limited to a church building or written words, but poured through all creation. And then Jesus said clearly, I am present in all things. My presence moves through everything, through the ground beneath your feet, the wind in the air, the water that flows, and the fire that burns. The rituals you saw were not random acts. They were expressions of a deep bond between the Creator and everything He created. In that moment, I realized that true spirituality isn't limited to just one group, one belief system, or one tradition. It is something universal, something that can show up in many different ways, but always with the same divine source at its core. As Jesus continued walking with me on that journey, He began explaining the pain and hardships that African people and Black Americans had gone through across history. I saw clearly that the fight for freedom, dignity, and equal rights was more than human strength. It carried a divine purpose that stretched far back into time, something that had been spoken and planned by God long before. "Victoria," Jesus said gently, "the struggle of the Black community is not only about human rights. It is a spiritual battle as well." He continued, "This battle is about bringing back divine truth and real justice to the earth. Their fight is for the dignity, honor, and rightful position that has always belonged to them in my kingdom. They are my precious ones, and I have listened to every cry from their hearts." Those words hit me deeply. I felt the power behind that revelation. It meant that all the pain, anger, and oppression Black people faced did not just disappear into nothing. Instead, those experiences were part of a much bigger spiritual struggle for truth and fairness. The fight for equality among African Americans wasn't only political or social, it was a calling placed on their spirits. God had seen every injustice, and He was using this community to spark change in the world. I saw that the strength of Black people, from enslaved ancestors to modern freedom fighters, was a reflection of God's purpose working through them. Even though the journey was painful, God was using those struggles to guide humanity back toward truth, love, and unity. I began to see how African people fit into God's plan for salvation. Jesus showed me that the hardships Black people endured were a testimony to the world, proof that the divine spark inside them survived everything, even the heaviest suffering. "Victoria," Jesus said, "the return of my people will come during a great awakening. The truth about who they are and why they were chosen will become clear to everyone. When that truth shines again, restoration and unity will follow." I received a vision of Jesus returning, bringing justice and peace to all nations, but especially bringing healing and honor to the Black community. In that future time, the hidden truth about their divine origin would finally rise into the light. People everywhere would recognize the blessing that had been misunderstood and ignored for so long. As I began to return to my physical body, I felt a strong and comforting peace wash over me. I realized that the divine heritage of Black people was never something to hide away. It was a sacred treasure passed down through generations, something that would continue to shine as a guiding light of strength, hope, and divine purpose. When I eventually woke up in the hospital, I knew I was not the same person anymore. The doctors said I had been clinically dead for over 12 minutes, but what I experienced could never be explained by medical science alone. I had seen God's plan unfold with my own eyes, and most importantly, I had felt the deep love and endless mercy of Jesus, who revealed to me the true and sacred role of Black people in God's kingdom. And if you are watching or listening to this, I want you to understand that what I experienced wasn't just meant for me, it was meant for all of us. The truth I was shown is this: Black people are not cursed. They are divinely chosen, carrying a powerful legacy of strength, wisdom, and purpose that reaches across time. Our struggles are part of a spiritual battle, but in the end, there will be healing, restoration, and victory. If you are Black, remember that you are part of something much bigger than yourself. You are loved, chosen, and filled with powerful purpose. And if your background is different, this message is still for you, because God's plan includes unity and healing for everyone. Together, with understanding and love, we can help bring healing into this world.